They called it progress, but forgot who built the foundation. The day they went public, they buried my name beneath theirs. But what they didn't know, I held the code that made them rich. I spent 22 years building their empire, and the day I made them powerful enough to go public, they fired me like I was nothing. It happened on a Thursday. The kind of Thursday wise the coffee's gone cold before your first sip, and the air in the office feels just a little too still. The room cheered for the IPO, but Marcus stood in silence. His calm mask hid the quiet storm building underneath. I should have known something was off the moment the 900 a.m. all-hands meeting was rescheduled due to executive travel. Zenith Innovations wasn't just a company to me. It was my second skin. I joined when we were nothing but a team of 12, huddled in a sublease-aced office above a pizza shop. I'd helped write the first line of code for what would eventually become Zen AI, the machine learning engine that would make Zenith a household name in enterprise intelligence. Every line of code carried his fingerprint, invisible but undeniable. He wasn't there for applause. He was waiting for the fall. I was never the flashy one, not the stage walker, not the pitch deck polyhees. I was the builder, the architect, the one who worked through holidays and pulled back-to-back weekends to debug logic that no one else could even understand. But the moment Ryan Carter became CEO, everything shifted. He was younger than me by nearly 15 years, sharp polyhead and terrifyingly strategic. His calm mask hid the quiet storm building underneath. And when it came, it wouldn't be loud, it would be precise. He didn't need to tell me I was being phased out. I saw it in every excluded meeting invite, every sideways glance during presentations. He once introduced me to a group of investors as a longtime contributor to our legacy systems. Legacy, that's what you call something you plan to bury. But Ryan wasn't stupid. He wasn't there for applause. He was waiting for the fall. The room cheered for the IPO, but Marcus stood in silence. He knew that Zenai, the company's crown jewel, still relied on me, not just to maintain it, but to finish the final optimization layer that would make it IPO ready. No one else had the knowledge because no one else had built it. So he kept me close, just close enough to finish the work. Marcus, he'd say with that salesman's smile, you're a critical part of this process. Let's bring this home to this. And when it came, it wouldn't be loud, it would be precise. Every line of code carried his fingerprint, invisible, but undeniable. What he really meant was, just give me what I need, and then you can disappear. And I knew it. I just played along because I wasn't done playing either. For weeks, I worked around the clock finalizing the neural routing framework, integrating the autonomous learning module, and tightening the predictive audit trail. The room cheered for the IPO, but Marcus stood in silence. His calm mask hid the quiet storm building underneath. I trained the new hires he sent my way. Kids barely out of grad school who thought a shiny Python script was the same as a scalable engine. I documented every step. Not for them, for me. The betrayal came wrapped in corporate courtesy. At 4:12 p.m., I received a calendar invite labeled Strategic Transition Planning. Every line of code carried his fingerprint, invisible but undeniable. He wasn't there for applause. He was waiting for the fall. Eating was scheduled for 5:00 p.m. No agenda attached. I walked into conference room 9B and saw Ryan already seated, flanked by Elena from HR. His laptop was open. A pink folder sat neatly between them. Ryan didn't waste time. Marcus, he began. First, I want to thank you for everything you've done. But as we prepare for the next chapter of Zenith, we're moving toward a more agile structure, leaner, younger, future-focused. He was calm, rehearsed, smug. His calm mask hid the quiet storm building underneath. And when it came, It wouldn't be loud. It would be precise. Alina slid the folder toward me. "This outlines your severance terms," he said. 3 months pay health coverage and outplacement support. I looked at the folder, then at both of them. "Interesting timing," I said. "Right after I delivered the final deployment model." "It's not personal," Ryan replied, leaning back in his chair. "No," I said, standing. He wasn't there for applause. He was waiting for the fall. The room cheered for the IPO, but Marcus stood in silence. "It's predictable." I left the folder untouched. As I walked through the hallways of a company I had helped build, from Othis employees avoided eye contact. A few looked stunned. One whispered, "They really did it." At the elevator, I paused. This was a poster on the wall. Ryan's latest branding campaign. And when it came, it wouldn't be loud, it would be precise. Every line of code carried his fingerprint, invisible, but undeniable. "The future belongs to the bold." How fitting. Because bold is exactly what I was about to be. Back in my office, I powered on my personal laptop, opened a hidden folder labeled Phase 2. Inside all the legal documentation, the timestamps, the IP filings. They thought they had deleted me, but what they didn't know firing me was the trigger I'd been waiting for. The room cheered for the IPO, but Marcus stood in silence. His calm mask hid the quiet storm building underneath. By Friday morning, my access to internal systems had already begun to mysteriously glitch. My company email was still active, but several shared folders, especially the ones tied to Zenai's architecture, had suddenly disappeared from my drive. No official revocation notice, no explanation. Just digital silence. Every line of code carried his fingerprint, invisible but undeniable. He wasn't there for applause, he was waiting for the fall. They were phasing me out like you would an expired license. Still, I played along. Before I left, Ryan had insisted I finish knowledge transfer with a new team. In reality, it was nothing more than a sanitized term for squeezing out the last drops of value before kicking me out the door for good. And I gave them just enough. His calm mask hid the quiet storm building underneath. And when it came, it wouldn't be loud, it would be precise. Each session was held in one of the smaller conference rooms, with a rotating group of young developers sitting around me, like students at the feet of a professor they didn't respect. Half of them scrolled on their phones. The other half took notes they didn't understand. Their lead was a young guy named Travis, 26, cocky, all startup swagger and buzzwords. He wasn't there for applause, he was waiting for the fall. The room cheered for the IPO, but Marcus stood in silence. He called me ma'am with a smirk, like I was someone's out-of-touch aunt trying to explain dial-up internet. At one point, he interrupted me mid-sentence to say, "Actually, I read in a Medium article that LSTM networks are outdated. We should probably rewrite this section." I gave him a tight smile. "That's adorable. You can rewrite it after you learn what a data gate does." He shut up after that. And when it came, it wouldn't be loud. It would be precise. Every line of code carried his fingerprint, invisible, but undeniable. But Ryan, he loved Travis. Called him sharp, ambitious, a next-gen leader. I wasn't surprised when I overheard Ryan talking to the board during a video call. Travis has really stepped up. He's basically running Zen AI now. Basically, I nearly laughed out loud. What Ryan failed to mention was that Zenai without my final sequence was like a supercar with no ignition system. The room cheered for the IPO, but Marcus stood in silence. His calm mask hid the quiet storm building underneath. It looked sleek, powerful, revolutionary, until you tried to start it, and then it went nowise. But they didn't know that yet. They thought I'd handed it all over. That my polyhead exit interviews and meticulous documentation meant closure. They had no idea I'd carefully excluded the core routing layer from every internal demo, and that the real processing model, the one that actually made Zenai scalable, was stored in my personal Git repository under an encrypted protocol. Every line of code carried his fingerprint, invisible but undeniable. He wasn't there for applause. He was waiting for the fall they didn't even know existed. I hadn't created it on company time, not on company servers, not with company hardware. Every improvement I'd made in the past 2 years had been logged, time-stamped, and filed under my own name. Ryan might have stolen my credit, but he didn't own my mind. On Sunday night, 3 days after my termination, I received a call from Rachel Monroe, VP of Strategic Initiatives at Novatech AI, Zenith's largest competitor. His calm mask hid the quiet storm building underneath. And when it came, it wouldn't be loud. It would be precise. "Marcus," he said, his voice warm and curious, "I heard what happened. I also heard you might have something valuable." We met the next evening at a private table in a quiet restaurant just outside the city. No contracts, no pressure, just two professionals with aligned interests. "I have something your team might want to see," I told his, sliding over my tablet. He wasn't there for applause. He was waiting for the fall. The room cheered for the IPO, but Marcus stood in silence. I walked us through a live simulation of the Zen AI engine, my version. Faster, more stable, more secure than anything currently on the market, and most importantly, mine. Rachel's eyes widened. "You built this on your own. Every line." By the time dessert came, he was no longer just impressed. He was ready. And when it came, it wouldn't be loud, it would be precise. Every line of code carried his fingerprint, invisible but undeniable. "I'll have my legal team draft the licensing terms tomorrow," he said. "We'd be honored to have you as our chief AI strategist." I nodded once, and one condition I added. He smiled. "Let me guess. Press release, front page, full attribution, done." That night I walked out into the cold with a warmth in my chest I hadn't felt in years. The room cheered for the IPO, but Marcus stood in silence. His calm mask hid the quiet storm building underneath. It wasn't just victory I was feeling. It was something deeper. Validation. Zenith Innovations had stripped me of my title. But on Monday morning, they were going to find out they never owned what truly mattered. Monday morning dawned clear and sharp. I woke early, dressed without hurry, and watched the sunlight spill across my kitchen counter as I sipped coffee. Every line of code carried his fingerprint, invisible but undeniable. He wasn't there for applause. He was waiting for the fall. Not from a travel mug on the go, but from an actual cup. For the first time in years, I wasn't rushing to Zenith Innovations. And yet, I was very much on their schedule. At precisely 900 a.m., Zenith leadership team hosted a live virtual town hall to announce the company's strategic evolution. The stream was sent to all employees, partners, and curiously select members of the media. His calm mask hid the quiet storm building underneath. And when it came, it wouldn't be loud, it would be precise. I clicked the link and leaned back. The screen lit up with the company's new branding, sleek, sterile. It read, "Zenai, a new era begins." Then Ryan appeared, standing confidently at a podium, flanked by executives who looked like they had just walked off a startup brochure. Today, he said, "We're proud to unveil Zenai, a revolutionary leap forward in enterprise intelligence." He wasn't there for applause. He was waiting for the fall. The room cheered for the IPO, but Marcus stood in silence. Developed entirely by our in-house team, Zenai represents the culmination of bold thinking and next-gen leadership. I waited for the part wise he'd credit the work. He didn't. No mention of me. No recognition of the 22 years I poured into that platform. No acknowledgement of the nights I slept under my desk or the months I spent testing model stability when no one else knew what a recursive loop even was. And when it came, it wouldn't be loud. It would be precise. Every line of code carried his fingerprint, invisible, but undeniable. But he wasn't done. We'd also like to spotlight Travis, and Ryan continued motioning to the young developer I'd trained just weeks earlier. Travis led the final phase of development. His energy, creativity, and commitment to innovation embody what Zenith stands for. Travis smiled heapishly on screen, probably still digesting that line. The room cheered for the IPO, but Marcus stood in silence. His calm mask hid the quiet storm building underneath. I stared at the broadcast jaw, tight heart still. They'd done it. They'd officially written me out of my own work. I felt something crack inside me. Not pain, not sadness, just a kind of surgical clarity. They didn't just fire me. They stole what I built. And now they were dressing it up in headlines. Every line of code carried his fingerprint, invisible, but undeniable. He wasn't there for applause. He was waiting for the fall. But the real show hadn't started yet. At 9:23 a.m., as the town hall continued, my phone buzzed. A text from one of my former engineers at Zenith, someone who hadn't known I'd been dismissed until after the fact. Did you see the live stream? They just gave Travis the credit for Zenith. Everyone's confused. Some people are pissed. Thought you'd want to know. I responded with a single line. His calm mask hid the quiet storm building underneath, and when it came, it wouldn't be loud. It would be precise. Stay tuned. At 10:00 a.m., the press release from Novatech AI went live. Novatech AI acquires exclusive rights to revolutionary Zen framework developed by former Zenith lead architect Marcus Blake. My phone erupted. Emails, texts, LinkedIn notifications, journalists asking for interviews, former colleagues asking if it was true. He wasn't there for applause. He was waiting for the fall. The room cheered for the IPO, but Marcus stood in silence. It was more than true. It was official with full legal documentation to back it up. I had the patent, the logs, the version control records. I had the receipts. By 10:45 a.m., the situation at Zenith was beginning to spiral. Another text came in from my insider. Emergency executive meeting. Ryan looks pale. It says part of Zenith is returning back-end errors. And when it came, it wouldn't be loud. It would be precise. Every line of code carried his fingerprint, invisible, but undeniable. Legal is flipping out. What they were discovering far too late was that the most critical part of Zenith's infrastructure, the adaptive logic engine, wasn't functional because I hadn't left it behind. I'd given them documentation, yes, but the working model, the real model that lived in a proprietary container I'd built off-site, completely separate from company resources under my own IP protections. The room cheered for the IPO, but Marcus stood in silence. His calm mask hid the quiet storm building underneath. And now, Novat had it legally exclusively. By 11:30 a.m., Zenith stock had begun to drop. Not drastically yet, but enough to catch the attention of financial blogs. And just after noon, Ryan himself sent me an email. Subject line, "Let's talk." The body was short, vague, desperate. Every line of code carried his fingerprint, invisible but undeniable. He wasn't there for applause. He was waiting for the fall. Marcus, this seems to be a misunderstanding regarding Zenith. Could we set up a call to clarify a few things? I didn't reply. I forwarded it directly to Novatech's legal team. At 1 p.m., Novatech issued a follow-up statement, clarifying that any commercial use of the Zen logic engine would require licensing terms set by me, the registered inventor. By 2 p.m., his calm mask hid the quiet storm building underneath. And when it came, it wouldn't be loud, it would be precise. The panic at zenith was official. I received one more message from my insider. Travis is in tears. Ryan is screaming. Dev servers have been pulled for forensic analysis. Everyone is blaming each other. And still, I said nothing. I just watched the fallout unfold. Kong measured, prepared. They thought they'd erased me. He wasn't there for applause, he was waiting for the fall. The room cheered for the IPO, but Marcus stood in silence. But what they did was write the prologue to their own collapse. I didn't need to scream, make threats, or go public with accusations. I already had what mattered: the patent, the evidence, and the truth. And now, the leverage. By Tuesday morning, the financial press had picked up the story. What started as whispers in industry Slack channels had grown into full-blown coverage across major outlets. And when it came, it wouldn't be loud. It would be precise. Every line of code carried his fingerprint, invisible but undeniable. Who really built Zen AI Tension's mount as Novatech secures patent rights? Ex-Zenith architect holds legal key to flagship product. Within 24 hours, my name was trending on LinkedIn. People I hadn't heard from in years were messaging me: mentors, former colleagues, even competitors. A few offered congratulations. The room cheered for the IPO, but Marcus stood in silence. His calm mask hid the quiet storm building underneath. Some asked if I was open to speaking gigs. One simply wrote, "You're the story every quiet engineer dreams of becoming." I read that twice. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about recognition, something I had never truly had at Zenith. Ryan had spent months painting me as irrelevant. Now I was the one holding the pen. Every line of code carried his fingerprint, invisible but undeniable. He wasn't there for applause. He was waiting for the fall. Still, I wasn't interested in gloating. Not yet. At Novatech, the mood was electric. Rachel Monroe, their VP of Strategic Initiatives, brought me into meetings like I was royalty. Legal teams buzzed around me, making sure every licensing clause was airtight. Engineers were eager to understand the algorithm, asking questions with genuine respect, not the condescension I'd grown used to at Zenith. It was surreal. His calm mask hid the quiet storm building underneath. And when it came, it wouldn't be loud, it would be precise. But the best part, I wasn't done yet. Mid-morning, I received a message from a former Zenith colleague named Aisha. We hadn't been close, but he was sharp and ethical, one of the few who'd always treated me with respect. "Marcus, just so you know, Ryan's planning to spin a narrative. He's calling your patent a technical misunderstanding and saying you were just one of many contributors. He wasn't there for applause, he was waiting for the fall." The room cheered for the IPO, but Marcus stood in silence. "HR is drafting a statement to downplay your role." I smiled as I read it. Predictable. They were still playing corporate chess, hoping to reframe the story before it got away from them. But it already had. I waited until 100 p.m. sharp, then released a quiet statement through my attorney. And when it came, it wouldn't be loud, it would be precise. Every line of code carried his fingerprint, invisible but undeniable. As the registered inventor and sole patent holder of the Zen logic framework, I remain committed to innovation, transparency, and fair attribution. I will not respond to personal speculation, but all commercial use of the protected architecture must comply with licensing agreements as outlined in federal IP law. No anger, no fire, just precision. By 2:30 p.m., the room cheered for the IPO, but Marcus stood in silence. His calm mask hid the quiet storm building underneath. Zenith's legal team had reached out to Novatech, a polite request to open dialogue around potential licensing options. I let Rachel and his attorneys handle the response. Their reply was firm but fair. Licensing would be considered at 3 times the standard industry rate, and with public acknowledgement of me as the system's creator. Every line of code carried his fingerprint, invisible but undeniable. He wasn't there for applause, he was waiting for the fall. They weren't going to like that last part, but that was the point. At 4:00 p.m., I was invited to a live virtual panel hosted by a prominent tech media group. The topic: innovation ownership and the future of ethical AI. I didn't hesitate. That evening, the story hit national business networks. I watched quietly from my new corner office at Novatech as anchors and analysts debated who really owned innovation in corporate America and how many women like me had been erased before ever being celebrated. His calm mask hid the quiet storm building underneath. And when it came, it wouldn't be loud, it would be precise. One segment ended with a striking line. It's clear Marcus Blake wasn't just a contributor. He was the foundation, and now he's no longer silent. At Zenith, chaos was growing louder. My insider messaged again. Ryan's trying to rally the board. Says, it's just a PR hiccup, but morale is tanking. He wasn't there for applause, he was waiting for the fall. The room cheered for the IPO, but Marcus stood in silence. Senior engineers are polishing their resumes. I typed back, tell the good ones to check their inboxes. Because earlier that day, I had handpicked 6 of Zenith's most talented engineers, people I respected. People Ryan overlooked, and sent them personal offers to join my new team at Novatech. 5 responded within hours. And when it came, it wouldn't be loud. It would be precise. Every line of code carried his fingerprint, invisible but undeniable. One said, finally a place wise, we're not just seat fillers. By midnight, I shut my laptop and stood by the window looking out at the city lights. They tried to erase me. Now their entire company was built on something they no longer owned. Wednesday morning started like a whisper before a storm. The room cheered for the IPO, but Marcus stood in silence. His calm mask hid the quiet storm building underneath. I was in the studio room at Novatech HQ, surrounded by soft lights, soundproof walls, and a production team that knew exactly how to frame power. The final adjustments were being made to my mic as the countdown began on the screen in front of me. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2. Welcome to TechFront Live. Every line of code carried his fingerprint, invisible but undeniable. He wasn't there for applause, he was waiting for the fall. The host smiled from the other side of the screen. Today we're joined by Marcus Blake, architect of the revolutionary Zen framework and newly appointed Chief AI Strategist at Novatech. Marcus, thank you for being here. Thank you for having me, I replied calmly. The interview lasted 28 minutes. No fireworks, no direct jabs, just clarity, authority, presence. His calm mask hid the quiet storm building underneath. And when it came, it wouldn't be loud, it would be precise. I spoke about innovation, intellectual property, and the importance of attribution in the tech world. I walked viewers through the design philosophy behind the Zen engine. How it learns, how it scales, how it adapts. I didn't mention Ryan by name. I didn't need to. The industry already knew who I was talking about. He wasn't there for applause, he was waiting for the fall. The room cheered for the IPO, but Marcus stood in silence. And by the end of the segment, Marcus Blake was trending on Twitter. 30 minutes after the interview aired, Zenith stock dropped another 6%. At Novatech, Rachel burst into my office with a grin and a stack of papers. Our legal inbox is exploding. 3 major clients from Zenith just reached out about licensing inquiries. Already, I asked. And when it came, it wouldn't be loud, it would be precise. Every line of code carried his fingerprint, invisible, but undeniable. Oh, and he placed another folder on my desk dramatically. You're scheduled to keynote the Future Tech Summit next month, main stage. I opened the folder. It was my name headlining an event I'd been denied access to for years. I'd been the silent builder in the background of every innovation. Now I was the one stepping into the spotlight. At 11:45 a.m., the room cheered for the IPO, but Marcus stood in silence. His calm mask hid the quiet storm building underneath. My phone buzzed with a message from my insider at Zenith. All hands emergency meeting just announced. Board is present. Ryan's pacing. They know it's over. I didn't celebrate. Not yet. This wasn't about watching anyone fall. It was about ensuring they never rose again at the expense of people like me. By 100 p.m., news broke that multiple senior developers at Zenith had resigned. Every line of code carried his fingerprint, invisible, but undeniable. He wasn't there for applause. He was waiting for the fall. Most of them were the same people I'd trained, coached, and protected during my time this. I sent them each a welcome packet. Their start dates at Novatech would be staggered over the next 2 weeks. At 2:15 p.m., I received a formal email from Zenith's legal counsel. They were requesting an urgent discussion regarding licensing mitigation of damages and future collaboration. His calm mask hid the quiet storm building underneath. And when it came, it wouldn't be loud. It would be precise. I forwarded it to our legal team with a short note. Terms haven't changed. Novate's response was swift and public. Zenith Innovations is welcome to license the Zen framework at a premium enterprise rate, subject to full legal acknowledgement of Marcus Blake as the sole inventor and IP holder. Use of the algorithm without license constitutes infringement and will be pursued accordingly. At 3 p.m., he wasn't there for applause, he was waiting for the fall. The room cheered for the IPO, but Marcus stood in silence. Zenith hosted a press conference to try to salvage the narrative. Ryan looked like a hollow version of himself, pale, sweating through his designer's suit. He opened with the phrase, "I expected. We want to clear up some misconceptions." He called me a valued former team member, said Zenai had been a collaborative effort, attempted to minimize the damage by suggesting that all outstanding IP questions were being addressed amicably. But it was too late because 5 minutes into his speech, the screen behind him flickered and then switched. And when it came, it wouldn't be loud, it would be precise. Every line of code carried his fingerprint, invisible, but undeniable. TechFront interview began playing live, projected across the press room. I hadn't orchestrated it. Someone in the media had done it, or maybe someone from inside Zenith. Either way, the effect was brutal. I was calm, poised, confident, speaking clearly about the framework, the timeline, the legal filings, all documented, time-stamped, and verified. It wasn't just a PR win. The room cheered for the IPO, but Marcus stood in silence. His calm mask hid the quiet storm building underneath. It was evidence irrefutable. The room went silent. Ryan froze mid-sentence. By 3:45 p.m., the live stream was clipped and shared across every major platform. By 4, Zenith's board issued a separate statement. Effective immediately, Ryan Carter is stepping down as CEO. I read the alert while standing at the window of my office. Every line of code carried his fingerprint, invisible, but undeniable. He wasn't there for applause, he was waiting for the fall. Across the city, in the same building that had once sent security to escort me out, People were now packing up their desks under emergency lighting. HR teams scrambling clients, pulling contracts, confidence collapsing. They had built an empire on the back of something they never truly owned, and now it was crumbling from the inside out. His calm mask hid the quiet storm building underneath. And when it came, it wouldn't be loud, it would be precise. That evening, Rachel toasted with me in the Novatech boardroom. "To truth," he said, raising his glass. "To never being quiet again," I replied, and we drank calm, steady, and in complete control of the storm we just created. By Thursday morning, Zenith Innovations was in full-blown crisis mode. Their flagship product had been rendered legally unusable. Their CEO was gone. He wasn't there for applause, he was waiting for the fall. The room cheered for the IPO, but Marcus stood in silence. Their top engineers had resigned, and now they were being dragged through the mud by every tech journalist in the industry. What started as a whisper had become a headline. What began as arrogance had become an implosion. Zenith loses its core technology after IP oversight. The woman they fired now owns their future. And when it came, it wouldn't be loud. It would be precise. Every line of code carried his fingerprint, invisible but undeniable. Inside the fall of a tech giant that forgot to credit the architect. For the first time in 22 years, I didn't feel invisible. I didn't feel like an afterthought. I felt seen. That morning, I led my first official roadmap session with the new AI division at Novatech. Half the engineers in the room were from my old team at Zenith. The room cheered for the IPO, but Marcus stood in silence. His calm mask hid the quiet storm building underneath. The same people who had been sidelined, ignored, or underestimated. But not highs. Highs they were trusted, listened to, and empowered. We sketched out the evolution of the Zen framework, its next generation. I spoke and people took notes, not out of obligation, but out of curiosity, out of respect. Every line of code carried his fingerprint, invisible but undeniable. He wasn't there for applause, he was waiting for the fall. One of the engineers, Elena, a brilliant but overlooked developer for my old team, looked up mid-meeting and said, "I've never been in a room where I felt like I belonged, until now." That one sentence said everything. While I was building the future, Zenith was desperately trying to salvage the past. By noon, news broke that 2 of Zenith's major enterprise clients had signed partnership deals with Novatech. His calm mask hid the quiet storm building underneath. And when it came, it wouldn't be loud, it would be precise. The market responded swiftly. Zenith's stock dipped another 12%, officially marking a 36% decline in 5 days. Behind the scenes, Zenith's legal team continued reaching out, each message more urgent than the last. They wanted to settle. They were willing to license. They were even willing to pay the inflated rate. He wasn't there for applause. He was waiting for the fall. The room cheered for the IPO, but Marcus stood in silence. But what they couldn't stomach was the clause requiring them to publicly recognize me as the sole inventor. That clause wasn't negotiable because this was never just about money. This was about truth, and truth doesn't bend to comfort. At 3:30 p.m., I received a final message from my insider, now a Novatech employee. And when it came, it wouldn't be loud. It would be precise. Every line of code carried his fingerprint, invisible, but undeniable. Just heard the legal head and head of HR were both let go. The board is completely overhauling leadership. Ryan's name has been scrubbed from every internal document. I stared at that last sentence, scrubbed. The irony didn't escape me. They had tried to erase me. Now, they were erasing him. At 5:00 p.m., Zenith released a final statement. The room cheered for the IPO, but Marcus stood in silence. His calm mask hid the quiet storm building underneath. Simple, stark, defeated. Zenith Innovations acknowledges the proprietary rights of Marcus Blake as the creator of the Zen framework. We are engaging in licensing negotiations and will be restructuring internal processes to ensure this type of oversight never occurs again. It was over. I closed my laptop, leaned back in my chair, and took a deep breath. Every line of code carried his fingerprint, invisible but undeniable. He wasn't there for applause. He was waiting for the fall. For 22 years, I was the quiet one, the background figure, the invisible architect. They underestimated me because I didn't play politics, because I wasn't flashy, because I didn't shout. But now the entire industry knew my name. And this time, no one would ever forget it. 1 year to the day after I was fired, I walked onto the main stage at the Women in Technology Global Leadership Summit. His calm mask hid the quiet storm building underneath. And when it came, it wouldn't be loud. It would be precise. The lights were warm, the audience packed. CEOs, engineers, journalists, students, and some wise in the middle row. I spotted the faces of several women I had mentored over the past few months. Quiet warriors with notebooks and fire in their eyes. The applause started before I even reached the podium. I took a breath, held it for a moment, then spoke. He wasn't there for applause. He was waiting for the fall. The room cheered for the IPO, but Marcus stood in silence. 12 months ago, I was escorted out of a building I helped build. Not because I failed, but because I'd quietly succeeded for too long. A ripple of silence swept across the room. I wasn't the loudest. I didn't wear the flashiest titles. I didn't play politics, but I built the architecture that built the company. And when they thought they could erase me, they learned something far more dangerous. And when it came, it wouldn't be loud. It would be precise. Every line of code carried his fingerprint, invisible, but undeniable. You can fire a person, but you can't erase what they created. The applause this time was thunderous. When the keynote ended, dozens of attendees came up to shake my hand. Several told me they had started documenting their code and creative work differently because of me. A few said they had pewed back against unfair credit practices in their own teams. But one interaction stayed with me. The room cheered for the IPO, but Marcus stood in silence. His calm mask hid the quiet storm building underneath. He couldn't have been older than 26, glasses badge clipped, crooked voice shaky. They always tell people like us to be grateful just to be in the room, he said. But watching you, I realized we can own the room. We can build the room. I smiled. Yes, I said, we always could. That night, I returned to my office at Novatech, a space that overlooked the skyline. Every line of code carried his fingerprint, invisible, but undeniable. He wasn't there for applause. He was waiting for the fall. Zenith once thought they ruled alone. On my desk was a white envelope, thick, expensive stock, no return address. Inside was a single heat of paper with handwriting I recognized immediately. Ryan Carter, Marcus Thesis, no version of this wise I look good. I made the wrong call. I was threatened by someone who didn't play by the power games. I understood. His calm mask hid the quiet storm building underneath. And when it came, it wouldn't be loud. It would be precise. I thought I could take your work without honoring your name. I've lost everything now, but I suppose you gained what they never gave you. Your name back, Ryan. I read it twice, folded it once, then tucked it into a drawer I no longer opened out of anger, but out of understanding. He was right about one thing. He wasn't there for applause. He was waiting for the fall. The room cheered for the IPO, but Marcus stood in silence. They had tried to take my name off the work. Now it was printed on conference badges, quoted in textbooks, referenced in legal precedent. Marcus Blake, inventor of Athenori, the first self-adaptive enterprise AI to scale globally under female leadership. The industry had learned not just from me, but from the warning my story carried. And when it came, it wouldn't be loud, it would be precise. Every line of code carried his fingerprint, invisible, but undeniable. Innovation isn't anonymous, and no one should have to beg for the credit they've earned. Weeks later, I received an invitation to join the Federal Technology Advisory Board. The seat once held by someone who said I was too niche for policy conversations. This time they asked me to lead the AI Ethics Division. I accepted, not out of revenge, but because the best way to lead is to make sure no one else gets erased. The room cheered for the IPO, but Marcus stood in silence. His calm mask hid the quiet storm building underneath. I'd fought to own my story, and now I was building a world wise others wouldn't have to wise names like mine, wouldn't be remembered in spite of the system. But because we changed, every line of code carried his fingerprint, invisible but undeniable. He wasn't there for applause, he was waiting for the fall.